Hi, I'm J. Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week we are looking at the books of March 23rd and March 30th. We folded 2 weeks together. But speaking of weeks and upcoming things, we are just over a week out from Emerald City Comic-Con in Seattle. That is April 7th to 10th, and we will be there all 4 days.
Yes, we're going to have a table, or half a table anyway. We're going to be in Artist Alley at L18 along with David Wynn, who's the guy that does the super rad illustrations for all of our episodes.
We've also got a couple of really big things going on. We are doing a live panel, a live show on Friday at 5:30 p.m. So on the 8th. With guests Chris Anka, Scott Koblish, and G. Willow Wilson. It's going to be amazing. If you made it to our Rose City panel or you heard that episode, you already know sort of how this goes down, but we are really, really excited. We're really excited about that lineup of guests.
Seriously. And we also, the next day, Saturday at 7 p.m. at Phoenix Comics, we're going to have a listener meetup. There's going to be like a cake and a lot of awesome people.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a meetup and the podcast's second birthday party, and you should come. It's awesome. You don't have to have a badge for that, actually. It's that's not actually convention affiliated, so you can just show up. Yeah, come say hi. Come buy stuff. We will have stuff for sale that
you can just random stuff,
that
whatever
you can get
we
in
found,
exchange for legal tender. That's not true. We're gonna have T-shirts. We're gonna have buttons. We're gonna have zines. There will be other things. I can't remember what. A bunch of my mini comics.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, you should come. And David will have prints and originals, and he'll be doing commissions, which you should email him about ahead of time so that his list doesn't fill up because they are really good and awesome. And yeah, come see us at Emerald City.
Yes. In the meantime, let's review some comics. We'll start with last week's book, Uncanny X-Men number 5, written by Cullen Bunn, with pencils by Greg Land, inks by Jay Leiston, and colors by Nolan Woodard. So this one, it's, well, I should start out by saying it's the last issue, at least for now, possibly permanently, we're not sure, that Greg Land will be doing art on.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know Greg Land's art is a sticking point for a lot of people. It's certainly not my favorite, and Jay, it seems to really not be your favorite.
You know, I have really tried to give him a chance on this series, and there have been issues where I felt like maybe it was adequate, where it was okay, where it wasn't wildly distracting. This is the one that kind of broke me. If it were not changing art teams, and if we didn't have to review it, this is the issue where I would have stopped buying the series.
Ouch.
The art has gone from okay and not the best to incoherent.
Gotcha. I didn't find it to be as bad personally. But for me, I'm just happy that there's less Monet making weird faces. But
everyone else is making weirder faces.
Maybe.
Like, it was limited to Monet before, and this is the issue where I just feel like it just splayed across the whole issue and all the characters.
Well, one's mileage may vary, but like I said, last issue before a new artist takes over, I will say Cullen Bunn's writing overall, I think, continues to be excellent. His Magneto series was great, and it's starting to feel like a really logical follow-up to that series in terms of, okay, you give Magneto a team, you give Magneto agency, he's not just on the run, what does he do? And it turns out, not always great stuff. And I feel okay about that. I feel like the morally gray Magneto we've seen in the Magneto solo series and here is a fascinating version of that character, as much as I miss the Headmaster.
Yeah, I like the way Bunn writes Magneto, historically. Again, with this, I had a lot of trouble with the writing and with even following it just because it was so utterly discordant and disconnected from what was happening in the art, tonally. And narratively to some extent. Like, it just felt like a mashup of two different comics. It was like to the point that it was really hard for me to follow.
What you're describing sounds a little bit like part of Kieran Gillen's run on Uncanny X-Men when Greg Land was doing art. Again, one's mileage varies, but so I want to focus on the writing because that I really liked. So one thing that I'm enjoying the hell out of with this comic is the dynamics between different pairs of characters. And I think my favorite that I've seen so far is probably Psylocke and Magneto. She was fascinating in Uncanny X-Force, and even the slightly different version of her in Cy Spurrier's X-Force, similarly fascinating. And here it's really cool to see this character who has killed a lot, who has a dark side big time, and who still is just struggling so hard to be the moral compass of this team. I think it's especially interesting her playing off Magneto, who just doesn't really care about being a good person.
Speaking of things relative to that moral compass role, I don't want to spoil what's going on with Angel in this book, but for me that is I mean, he's basically become Chekhov's horseman here.
Yeah, and I mean, we already know that in the upcoming Apocalypse War storyline that this book is doing, it's going to be largely about Angel, which is to say Archangel, which is to say Death, which is to say the Apocalypse Seed, which is to say blah. And I mean, the sort of dangling mystery of what the deal is with him, why he's basically a mindless telepath-controlled drone at this point, that's been really engaging. I really want to find out what's going to happen, but it hasn't been annoying the same way the Cyclops Noodle incident has been. So that's being handled really well, and I'm finding myself super excited about Apocalypse Wars, which I believe starts in this book next issue. So yeah, this series, there's a lot of potential. There's some solid writing. I think with a different writer-artist team, with the new artist taking over, this could turn into something really awesome and really special, so fingers crossed for that.
Next up, we've got a new series, X-Men 92 #1, written by Chris Sims and Chad Bowers, with art by Alti Fermansaya and colors by Matt Milla. Oh man, I really like this book. I should say the usual conflict of interest disclaimers about books by Chris Sims apply. He's one of my best friends. I'm biased. This is still amazing, and you should read it.
I don't know Chris nearly as well, and I really like this book too. Specifically, I want to start. Can we talk about Alti Fermansaya and how her art is great?
Dude, Fermansaya and Milla in combination, because I feel like you can't pull one out, and still have this. Like the art is so on point here.
Yeah, so Alti Fermansaya, we first discovered her in the Secret Wars Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde book. She had this sort of like Disney-ish, very expressive cartoony style that was great in that, and she's doing a variant of that, a little bit more like X-Men cartoon from the 90s in this, and it's perfect. It's exactly what this book should have.
Yeah, man, if you had told me that I would be as satisfied with a follow-up to Scott Koblish on this, I would have laughed in your face, but no, and then I would have traveled back in time from here to laugh at that version of myself, because
that's complicated.
I know.
Are you Cable or something?
Well, it's a good thing you didn't tell me that. Maybe. No, I don't know.
Well, anyway,
this looks bad.
This looks bad.
Well, I'm wearing the shirt for it.
So we watched this Hawkeye fan film today. It's like 7 minutes long, and it was kind of great, I gotta say. It's based on the recent run.
We gotta review the comics. We can talk about that after, but yes, it is delightful.
Yeah.
It is.
So, okay, X-Men, right.
Right, X-Men 92. So if you read the Secret Wars series, and if not, I should say, go back and read it. It's fantastic.
We're totally in it.
Yeah, we're in it. We are. It's great. Miles has a sweater vest. I'm really jealous.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm not jealous in the comic. I'm like, real me is. It's a really good sweater vest. And as the one of us who actually wears them. Anyway, right, so the Secret Wars X-Men 92 series was a 4-issue miniseries. It was a lot of fun. This is a direct sequel to that, but you don't really need to have read it to follow here. What you need to know is this. It takes place in a world that's basically the X-Men of 92. It's a mashup of the comics and the cartoons. The Secret Wars series was much more cartoon-inflected. Here we're seeing a lot more of the comics influence coming in. And man, the juxtaposition of those two things is amazing. So one of the things that works best about this book, visually and narratively, is that it's a pretty even blend of parody and homage. Like, there's a lot of really genuine affection behind it. And that marriage sort of reminds me of the way the cartoon and comics elements are coming together, because on one hand, you have the BS&P mediated cartoon. It's very Saturday morning and very much for kids. And on the other hand, you have comics at kind of the peak of their big pecs, big guns, big tits, like ultra-violent stage.
It's got Maverick, you guys. I mean, Maverick.
It's got, I mean...
And Russians.
It's also, they are, man, Sims and Bowers are jumping straight into the deep end in terms of the convoluted 92 comic stuff that they have decided to try to make work in here. And they're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, this is revealed very early on, but they're basically doing the upstarts.
I can't think of villains more 90s than the upstarts. And I say that with equal parts, like, love and disdain, because they never really resolved that upstarts plotline. They kind of did, but it never made any sense. Anyway, so yeah, I'm curious to see where this book goes, because a lot of the plot threads that are being picked up really didn't go anywhere, and this book has the opportunity to fix that. A lot of the plot threads that are being picked up are just out of nowhere, like the freaking People's Protectorate show up. So it's a cool mix of stuff. I also do want to talk about, you mentioned this is a little bit more comic inflected, but the feel of the cartoon is still very much here. There's a bunch of the characters keep appearing one after another in the opening montage, and man, Gambit and Rogue's accents are just, I would say on point, but it's like, it's on people don't really talk like that, but maybe they should point.
Oh man, I'm trying to find, I need to find the description of Gambit. Where is it? Yes, part-time thief, full-time scoundrel.
Yeah, pretty much. So if you're looking for the X-Men just kind of distilled down to their goofiest but also awesomest selves, you could do a lot worse.
You know, we talked a while ago, and this hasn't been the case for a long time, that the X-Men is a line that is mired in complex continuity and soap opera. That's definitely very true of all of the mainline books right now. But sometimes there's a title off to the side that's the fun book. Mm-hmm. And right now that is X-Men 92. It's in its own timeline. It's totally disconnected from the rest of the Marvel Universe. It is ignoring the rest of the Marvel Universe. There's no noodle incident, which I appreciate. And it's just delightful. I have a cold, and I was reading this, and I kept on laughing and then coughing, and it took me like an hour to get through the book because of it. And I regret nothing because, yeah, it's just immensely, immensely enjoyable.
Last, we have All New X-Men number 7, written by Dennis Hopeless with pencils by Mark Bagley, inks by Andrew Hennessy, and colors by Nolan Woodard. So this continues to be a great series, and this issue was really a big surprise. So we knew that the X-Men, the young X-Men that is, had been fighting Blob in the last couple issues, and the interesting stuff in those issues was not them fighting Blob, it was the sort of character development soap opera stuff. When Toad shows up toward the end of that part of the story and was being listed as the main villain of this arc, I wasn't expecting to care, but I gotta say, this is probably the most compelling Mortimer Toynbee has been, like, ever. And I was not expecting that.
You know what it is? It's Cable and X-Force Boom Boom.
Explain.
It's taking a lot of really divergent and often contradictory versions of a character and synthesizing them into a believable collective outcome. Yeah,
I think so. And I mean, it especially takes recent continuity into account, where Toad had kind of gone straight and been the janitor for the X-Men, and then gotten really bummed with what happened with Paige, and then maybe it was okay, and then the noodle incident, still being teased, happened, and he got super disillusioned, and started drinking, and got really messed up, and just wants the world to be okay again. He wants the world to be that vision of okay that he briefly had and then lost when whatever Cyclops did happened. And I buy that. So seeing him capture Cyclops, young Cyclops that is, and go back and forth on whether he's going to murder him to try to fix the timeline, even though we as X-readers know that won't work, it's sad.
Yeah, I'm frankly surprised that plotline hasn't come up sooner, because you'd think that, like, the Marvel Universe as a whole would be all over that.
Yeah. And so this issue manages to be both very sad and very tense, because that feeling of risk, that feeling of threat, it feels a lot more real than it does in most comics. And in fact, some really bad, really surprisingly brutal for this comic stuff happens in these pages. And so that's kind of awesome. That's kind of awesome seeing a book that I previously loved put out an issue that I love for entirely different reasons. You know, not a lot happens in this one. It's basically Toad going back and forth on whether to kill Cyclops and the rest of the young X-Men looking for him. But I really feel like I got my time and money's worth.
You know, we said last issue, I think, that this is basically the old school New Mutants of the current lineup. It's the book about the teenagers that's way darker than the rest of the comics put together. But issue. Also simultaneously coming of age stories. Well, previous issues too. I mean, it's a fairly unrelentingly emotionally and physically brutal title.
I guess that's true, yeah.
And it's got bright moments among those, but yeah, this is very much in kind with that. The trappings of this one felt a little nonsensical in ways that were distracting.
How so?
The whole, like, fancy, vaguely occult setup, that was sort of bizarre.
I mean, Toad got pretty messed up, so of course he's going to have a candle on top of a skull and be hanging out in the catacombs of Paris.
I mean, the catacombs part I can see just because it's underground and concealed, although they do guided tours. So.
After this, he listens to Stabbing Westward and, you know, turns all the lights off and lights some incense. I'm not making fun of your past directly.
To be fair, you turned me on to Stabbing Westward. That was your fault.
Okay, that's a valid point.
That was 100% you.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with this story. Like, the issue ended, and I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. But I really hope that this version of Toad sticks around. I hope that he's not just, you know, reset into this sort of goofy henchman character next time we see him. Because there's some interesting stuff here with a character who appeared very early on in X-Men and has very seldom been interesting. So, well done, Dennis Hopeless, on that. Well done, everybody working on this book.
Yeah, I want to add, it's relatively easy to take a hero who's been kind of bland and make them more interesting or inconsistent. Doing that with a minor villain strikes me as much more of a trick. Which is one of the things I like about this, because again, historically, X-Men's historically had really nuanced villains, but that's been largely limited to the major villains. You have, you know, Magneto, who's this very interesting, you know, gray character, and then his henchmen, who are really not a lot of the time, or likewise with Mystique. And who again, you know, gets her own title and gets to be much more complex. But the background villains are just kind of either evil or goofy with very little in between.
Hey, Avalanche is a gardener. He totally has a character trait.
Avalanche owns a bar.
That too.
If it's still around, I don't know if it's actually still around.
Everything gets broken. Probably not.
But yeah. No, and Pyro wrote romance novels.
Then he died of the legacy virus.
He did, but you don't see them develop that much further, or at least you rarely do. And Toad is one who's really never gotten very far in that direction. It's nice to see. So that's 3 of 3. Miles, what's our issue of the week?
I mean, I really liked All New X-Men, but I gotta say, X-Men 92 #1 is glorious. Like you were saying, I was just laughing and smiling the entire time I was reading it. It's a lot of fun, and as a first issue, it does exactly what it should. It sets up the premise, it sets up the characters, it leaves you wanting more. I mean, I hesitate to throw around the term perfect, but this is a damn good #1. What about our panel of the week?
Our panel of the week is also from X-Men 92, and look, there are objectively better composed panels this week. There are ones that are more spectacular. But there's only one panel in any X book this week or last where Rogue hits someone upside the head with a grizzly bear, and for me, like, if that doesn't define panel of the week, I don't know what does.
Oh, Ursa Major. You don't get to be dignified very often. You remember that one time Ursa Major had to get naked to escape a sinking ship in that X-Men Avengers series?
I do. That was the one where Wolverine turned out to know a bunch about maritime law, which I really hope comes up in this series. It seems like a place where it could.
The X-Men live in a rich universe.
They do. And sometimes they hit people with bears.
That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here, but think it would be way better without our faces, check out our podcast, Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes come out every week at explainthexmen.com, also on iTunes and Stitcher. We've got a good one this week.
Yes, this week we start the Excalibur ongoing. We covered The Sword is Drawn with our last big special, but we did the first few issues, and there's so much good stuff. There's werewolves and weird costumes and silly posters and the Juggernaut and hilarious physical comedy and a weird lighthouse. This series, I'm so excited we're finally starting it.
It's pretty great. That podcast, these video reviews, and everything at explainthexmen.com comes to you via our Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely listener-supported project. That's how we're able to stay on the air and ad-free and keep doing cool projects. If you want to join the folks who make this possible, you can do that at the link either above or below this podcast, depending on where you're watching it. Also, come see us at Emerald City Comic Con, and I should say also come join us on IMSI. We are experimenting with the social media thing. I'll put a link to our page where you can get an invite below the video.
Yes, indeed. See you soon with reviews and episodes, but also Seattle, if you're there, you should totally come see us. We love you.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay.
You made it weird.
I made it weird?
I don't know.
I just stood there.
I'm weird. I made it weird.
We make it weird.